So I'm gonna just leave and
Okay. See. All right.
All
Well, it is
right.
2. Shall we let in the people?
Yeah, close the waiting room. How do we do that? All right. Welcome, everyone. We are the Sustainable Economies Law Center. We envision the world without the need for lawyers, but until then, we provide legal education, research, advice, and advocacy for just and resilient communities. Our Lucky Charms for Lawyers and for Other Tender Humans series provides tricks for breaking spells of fear, competition, and isolation. I am Tia Taruk Myers, the Director of Legal Education, and soon you'll meet my coworkers, Tobias and Janelle. But first, did you know that California has new MCLE requirements? Beginning last year, licensees are now required to complete and report compliance on these new subfields listed on this slide. This MCLE covers 1 hour of competence credit under wellness education. If you need an hour of prevention and detection education credit, you can watch part 1 of Lucky Charms for Lawyers, where we explained how our legal system harms us by setting up a system of winners and losers and making us compete to belong. In Lucky Charms Part 2, we're exploring how our legal system creates feelings of. Uh-huh. I'm just going to mute. Okay. In this MCLE, we're exploring how our legal system creates feelings of loneliness, failure, and anxiety. On March 4th, we're hosting Lucky Charms for Lawyers Part 3, which is approved for 1 MCLE credit for the new subfield of civility in the legal profession. In that MCLE, we'll reveal how hierarchies of power and worth hurt us on the inside and out, and how that's a root cause of incivility in the legal profession. And by the way, when we got this email about how there's this new MCLE requirement for dealing with incivility, I felt all of my coworkers just roll their eyes at the same time. It was really annoying, but we're going to help you get through it on March 4th. Today, though, we're focusing on wellness education. According to the California State Bar, wellness competence encompasses practical strategies for managing mental health, stress, and overall well-being that are tailored to the legal profession. And that's important because it really feels like a dark spell has been cast on lawyers. People in the legal profession not only report having very high levels of depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, but screening for symptoms has shown even higher levels. At the Law Center, we believe a root cause is the story we're told about who and how we should be, which effectively puts us in a trap. We're told to be in control in a world that cannot be controlled. We're told to dominate over others in a world where others are trying to dominate over us. And we're always told to work harder because we'll never be perfect enough. And this is like a dark spell that gets cast on lawyers. And what we're offering today are some counter spells in the form of Lucky Charms. And in case you missed part 1, our one inspiration for today's workshop is the breakfast cereal Lucky Charms, which has cute marshmallows with magical powers. Our hope is to give you some real nourishment today for your mind, body, and soul. And we'll use short, bite-sized lessons, each of which is like a magical charm. We're sharing the charms that have been most effective in breaking spells for us. Here are just some things we do that help us. So we'll use several pedagogical tools listed here. In other workshops for lawyers, the content tends to be quite cerebral, focused on the substance of the law. But here we're trying to focus on the deeper parts of ourselves, our embodied experiences, emotions, unconscious and subconscious beliefs and habits, all of which affect how we show up as lawyers and how we are able to thrive as humans. We are multifaceted beings who need to be reached in a variety of ways. So we're going to try many of them. With that said, we're not just here to tell you to take deep breaths so that you can survive a broken legal system. We want to get to the root of what causes so much anguish. And with that, my coworker Tobias is going to dive into our first lucky charm. Toby, please introduce yourself because I didn't say anything about you.
Hi everyone, it's so great to see you here. My name is Tobias Damloor. I'm a staff attorney at the Sustainable Economies Law Center, and I'm also a co-steward of the organization, meaning I wear many different hats. I'm a general circle member, financial circle member, uh, and I also do communications work. So do lots of different things other than legal attorney work. So yeah, as Tia mentioned, we wanted to introduce some charms to you. And this charm is a short embodied contemplation to help us see the impact of how we view our roles as lawyers. So I want people to start with first noticing the sensation in your body. So how are you feeling today? Like, do different parts of your body feel? Like, where's the numbness? Is there numbness? Is there tingling? Is there coldness, warmth? Just locate all those sensations in your body. And now say the following phrase to yourself. I'm a lawyer, and it's my job to be in control. It's my job to win. Notice any changes in the sensations in your body. Do you feel a tightening anywhere? A quickening of the pulse, perhaps, or pain? Notice where you feel it. Some people might feel tightening in their shoulders or their fists. Some might feel tightening in their throat or stomach, a tensing of the jaw or in the forehead. Another possible feeling is numbness. And it's also possible to not know what you're feeling at all. And that's perfectly okay. Next slide, please. All right. Now we're going to try and say the following to ourselves. I'm a lawyer, and it's my job to nurture. Say this a few times and notice whether it changes anything in your body. I'm a lawyer, and it's my job to nurture. It's quite possible that for many of you, you'll feel a softening in your body, maybe a warm feeling in your torso. You might particularly feel different if you previously felt tension in contemplating the other statement. All right. So yeah, since this is a mandatory MCLE that had its origins as substance abuse prevention education, it's worth noting how many forms of addiction arise to seek relief from the tension that comes from wanting to be in control and what we're taught as lawyers to be in control and to win. Um, so yeah, like in response to that tension, we might reach for alcohol or a social media scroll to get away from this tension and pressure. Or we could get addicted to the work itself, getting small hits of gratification from the feeling that we're winning, that we're accomplishing something, we're in control, or gaining an advantage. One purpose of the activity that we just did is to demonstrate how a simple reconceptualization of our roles in society and our roles as professionals can shift the tension and the stress that we hold. And that's it for that charm. I'll transfer it to the next person.
Thank you so much, Tobias. Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Orsi. I'm a co-founder of the Law Center and a staff attorney. And among my credentials as a lawyer, I have been a depressed lawyer, an alcoholic lawyer, a workaholic lawyer, an anxious lawyer, a procrastinating lawyer, and many other things that I think have prepared me well for teaching workshops like this. I've learned a lot over the years, so I'm excited to share with you. And so Toby just took us on a journey to find out where our stories about ourselves live in our bodies. And I'm going to take us on a journey to explore where these stories live in our minds and our thoughts. And I'll share that probably like many people, I have so often in life been in an experience that I'm excited about. I'm happy to be there. Maybe I'm playing with a child or a puppy, or I'm out in nature. But then as it turns out, I'm not really there. Actually, my mind is just being bombarded by other thoughts that take me elsewhere, like emails I need to respond to, or things on my to-do list, or things I'm annoyed about. And when I came to realize I was doing this, so often I was just escaping where I was and going someplace else. I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to be in my life. And so one of the things I have done to try to be in my life a little bit more is for many years, I've spent time almost every day just noticing my thoughts, just finding out what is happening in there. And through meditation practice, I very often sit down with the intention to pay attention to something in my body, and it's usually my breath. And I think, yeah, just for 5 minutes, I can do that, right? I'll just pay attention to the great feeling of breathing. And then as soon as I'm into it, I'm just engulfed in thoughts and bombarded. And I find that my mind, even when I want to give myself permission to be quiet or be in the present, my mind is just cluttered with thoughts. And I came to recognize not only is this kind of clouding over my direct experience of life, but it's also taking a lot of energy because when I would pay attention to my thoughts, I thought, I don't need to be drafting an email in my head right now. That's taking up energy that I don't need to be expending. And so yeah, I got motivated to pay closer and closer attention. And I'll share that when I was early in my lawyer career, this is maybe back in 2010, 2011, I found it very helpful to start using a meditation app called Headspace. And I don't use it anymore. I use other apps and other practices, but at the time, it was really helping me. And one thing that really helped me is that Headspace has a lot of cartoon videos that help me actually understand what meditation is for, why we do it, how it works. And one of the practices is called noting practice. A lot of meditation traditions have this where they'll say, just place your awareness on your breath. And then when you notice that you're thinking, which is probably pretty often, just kind of note that gently, like, oh, I was thinking, and then go back to the breath. And the Headspace cartoon, I always remember it because there's this little feather. This person, their mind takes a feather and they poke the thought cloud, and the thought just disappears like poof. And it's very gentle. It's not like you're taking a mallet and beating down the thoughts. But for me, it was gentle, so it put some gentleness in my body when I was very stressed. But it also just kind of helped me get one little inch of distance between me and my thoughts. So I wasn't engulfed in them. I was just compassionately noticing, wow, I have a lot of thoughts. But I have to say, I did this practice for years, and over time, what I noticed was I wasn't necessarily improving in ways that were noticeable to me. My mind was just still cluttered with thoughts, and the thoughts would stress me out. So I started going deeper and wondering what actually creates these thoughts. Are there stories or beliefs or feelings that are just churning thoughts up into my consciousness? And so I adopted other practices, and I'm going to describe this practice today. I thought I might lead it, but then I was worried about timing, so I didn't want to feel rushed. But this is something you could come back and do. All of these are things you can come back and do. They're meant to be charms you can carry with you. Uh, but I just described noting practice. You might call this literally noting practice, because what I do sometimes is I'll pay attention to my breath with the great, intention to actually pay attention to it. But then, as always, thoughts will arise. But this time, instead of just poking them with a feather, I'll just jot down a word or two about that thought, which first of all gives me a little bit of assurance that if it was actually something important, I won't forget it. But it also ends up by the end of a meditation session, um, after I jot down the thought, I go back to my breath, I jot down whatever the next thought is, go back to my breath. At the end of the meditation session, I have this bullet list that is like data that I can study. And that data has given me some insights. And if you do this, I imagine you'll get insights too, which may be similar to mine and may be different because we are, after all different creatures. But I think there might actually be something that we all share in common, which is that for me, when I started to notice the patterns, I was doing a lot of planning of the future. I was rehearsing my evening plans. I was planning meals, thinking about what I was going to wear, what I was going to say, what I was going to write. To some extent, replaying the past, wishing it had been different. Sometimes escaping into a totally different fantasy world that doesn't exist and never will. But in all cases, what I kept asking myself was, what causes this thought? And at some point I said, are all of these thoughts social anxieties? And I started going through the list and being like, in a way, each of these thoughts is there to help me find a place of belonging in the world. It's to help me be in control. It's to help me look good and present a coherent self to the world. It's to help me, um, yeah, just organize my life and be in control. And we as humans, we're wired for social inclusion. We all want to belong here in this society. That's how we survive. And yet, here's this society derived from millennia of patriarchy and capitalism and white supremacy, all the layers. It's a society that's told us that the majority of people will actually be excluded. So we want inclusion, yet we're surrounded by exclusion. And so for me, and I think for many people, a lot of our thoughts are driven by a desire to get safe in a context that is highly unsafe. And so we plan, we rehearse, we worry. And that made me just ask myself, well, could I actually interrupt that thought? The thought that I have to be in control in order to belong, the thought that I need to compete in order to belong. What if I interrupt that thought? And I can share that actually in recent years, just in the last couple years, I would say my thoughts have actually finally become a little bit less cluttered, such that if I'm in a situation like playing with a puppy, the thoughts that I'm having are something more like, "Rawr, puppy!" And it's not like, oh, I need to send an email, but thoughts that are appropriate to the situation that I'm in. And I think a lot of it has to do with changing the story that I tell about myself. So it's, no, I'm not a lawyer who has to be in control of everything. I'm actually a human living surrounded by other humans who are loving. And by the way, part one of Lucky Charms, we spent a lot of time talking about how humans are loving. That is sort of our natural, intuitive way of being. Um, so I'm surrounded by loving humans, not people who are out to get me, for the most part. I am a human who is also here to nurture. And if that's my role here, then I already belong. Of course, the world would want me here. And I don't have all these problems to solve. I can just be. I can just be what I was put here to do, which is live. And, it's not like I could change that story in myself very easily, because in my mind, I could tell that story, but my body might still be going, the world's a scary place. And so that's why other charms come into play. I've needed a lot of charms, and I'm going to share a few more. One thing that helps me is to often repeat the line from the Mary Oliver poem, from Wild Geese, which starts out with, "You do not have to be good." And I just feel so liberated by that. I don't. Uh, I don't have to be good. And I was going to offer this because you could say this to yourself. Try saying it to yourself many times a day, like when you're going into a social situation, when you're going into a meeting or a meditation, or just starting off your workday. You do not have to be good. And it might actually um, slow down the tendency to be thinking, planning, preparing, posturing, posing, all of these kinds of thoughts. It might actually slow them down. And then she finishes that thought, you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves, which I kind of think is true. And this is partly based on what we shared in Lucky Charms Part 1, which is that humans are sort of naturally, impulsively, intuitively loving. And so, in many ways, we just have to let the soft animal of our body be its spontaneous, loving self. And I got to say, that's not easy. I'm also pretty literal. So, when I hear soft animal, I literally picture soft animals. And the soft animals within me are of many varieties, including many that get very freaked out. There's possum varieties of soft animals that get freaked out and paralyzed. There's squirrels who overwork and are hyperactive. And so I've had to learn to sort of soothe them and comfort them as a way to kind of access my softer animal self. And so one of the things that I've learned that I think we all know is that we all have this reptilian brain that's part of us that we share with all other vertebrate creatures. And a lot of times that is running the show. Uh, and it often bypasses our conscious thinking brain. And so I've gone deeper to try to understand what is that reptilian brain? What's it doing? How does it work? And I have found it really helpful to learn about this thing called the vagus nerve, which I have drawn out here. So that's my nervous system, your nervous system, the lizard's nervous system, basically. And what's important to know about this is it is often, it goes throughout our body. It's a nervous system that is designed to be scanning our surroundings for threats and sending us signals as to whether we are safe or not safe. And it's actually regulating our internal organs like heart and digestion and everything else that is part of helping us survive. And I found it helpful to learn about something called polyvagal theory. So there's an article linked here that you could come back to, and there's a lot that's been written and spoken about this. But the reason it's called polyvagal is it's not just one singular nervous system of fight and flight. When people start to look closer, there's multiple pathways there. So one pathway is the dorsal vagal, which when that pathway is activated, we go into more of a freeze or paralysis or collapse mode. When the sympathetic pathway is activated, that's more fight and flight. And then the ventral vagal is what's activated when we're calm and safe and feeling social. And in soft animal terms, I think of the dorsal vagal as symbolized by the possum. And I have spent a lot of my life in possum. I've gone through many periods of depression. And one of my favorite responses to stress is to procrastinate and just think, I'll do that tomorrow. And so, yeah, that has been one of my approaches. But I'm also very familiar with the fight and flight response. And people tend to know me more as a kind of a hyperactive, get things done person, because that's what gets presented more to the public. And that I symbolize with the squirrel, just kind of always scurrying around and trying to do a lot of things. And so I've also suffered from overwork and overexhaustion. And it has this level of activation has also kind of wreaked havoc on my digestive system and my heart and a lot of other physical things. And so lastly, what I aspire to be like, my role model is to be a little bit more like a capybara. And I chose capybara as a representation of the ventral vagal activation because I've spent a little time on the internet and found out that capybaras, these are the most giant rodents on Earth, mostly live in South America. They just sort of seem like these calm, chilled out creatures who spend a lot of time just hanging out with each other, hanging out with other species, and other species apparently find it very enjoyable to be around them. So that's why capybaras are somewhat my role model and why I feel like they're a good symbol of this social engagement activation. And so the most helpful thing that I've learned about all of this is that there's these different pathways of activation, and it's like a ladder, which means you can't just go from the bottom of the ladder and hop to the top. You need to climb the rungs in order. And that means that when you're in a when you're in a freeze mode, a paralysis possum mode, then you need to actually go up and activate your sympathetic system a little bit to kind of bring yourself back to life, and then kind of calm yourself into ventral vagal capybara mode. And so how you do that is to get out of possum mode, you kind of have to do something vigorous, like move and shake and dance or get mad and stomp around the house. And then you don't really want to stay there once you've kind of amped yourself up into squirrel mode. To regulate yourself into capybara mode, then you do things that are slower, like long, slow breaths or stretches, or maybe you call a friend or you ask for a hug or just give yourself a hug or look at pictures of capybaras on the internet. Um, and then that will get us up into a little more of a social state. So, just for a moment here, I want to invite people to come on camera if you're willing. I swear it'll only take a minute. But consider just like moving your body in a way that brings you to life and maybe shakes out the stress a little bit, like shake your hands, move your shoulder, jiggle your shoulders around. And if you see somebody else who's doing something that looks like it feels good, then maybe do that too. And this is one of the gifts of dancing is like if you're on a dance floor and you see somebody moving in a really fun, cool way, then you think, oh, that looks like it feels good. And then you mimic it and then you feel good. So that's offering a gift to others, but also receive the gift by impersonating the great movements that others are offering. So yeah, if anybody was feeling a little down-regulate, a little if feeling a little bit possum today, hopefully that got you up out of possum. And then to kind of move one more rung up the ladder, then I want to invite us to just now take our seats again and just take 3 breaths together, long, slow breaths, now that we're out of breath. And if you can, slow down your exhale because it has been found that a longer, slower exhale has a particularly soothing effect on our nervous systems. So yeah, take a moment, 3 deep breaths. Okay, thank you. Now we have a whole Zoom room full of capybaras. And yeah, I guess a major purpose of that is to just understand that our minds can't always override our bodies by just telling us we're okay. We actually need to communicate with our whole selves. And those are just a few ways that we can communicate with our whole nervous systems, communicate with the soft animals that live within us. And so, yeah, that was more of an embodied charm. And my next charm is going to take us back into our thinking brains just a little bit to use our minds to map out our responses to stress a little bit, and then also find out how we can remap our responses. So this is a tool that you can come back to and use as many times as you want in life. I have used it many times. And I created it after reading a book and finding a similar activity in that book. The book is Unwinding Anxiety by Judson Brewer. And it's an especially helpful book for people like me who I didn't believe I had anxiety. I actually started reading the book because somebody else I knew had anxiety. And then I realized, oh, this is me. This book is for me. Not only do I have anxiety, but it has shaped every contour of my life and my personality and my experiences. And I started mapping out many different ways I respond to stress and get into anxiety loops. So it's very helpful. The book brought me a lot of relief. So even if you don't believe you're a person with anxiety, give it a glance and you might discover something. And I have to think the nature of the society we live in, why don't we all have anxiety in a way? But yeah. So I'll just walk us through the map. So it starts out in this yellow box where we name something that stresses us out. And for me, that's dozens of things. So that's part of why I've filled out this map for myself dozens of times. So a stressor, a common one, is that many of us are afraid that we won't be able to meet our needs or our family won't be able to meet its needs. Or in my case, the nonprofit I started maybe won't be able to meet its needs. And that's stressful. So one way I might respond to that is by just playing dead until I figure out what I should do, just the avoidance behavior, procrastination, the possum behavior. And then that behavior, it's worth noting that behavior has an immediate reward to it, which is anytime I decide I'm going to put something off, I get a hit of relief from that responsibility. I can go rest, I could go play, and our reward-based learning system in our brain comes to closely correlate these two things. Procrastination, relief. Ah, that felt good. Let's do that again and again and again. The reward-based learning system is not as good at noticing the long-term negative impacts of our stress responses. And so this is why mapping it out helps, because then it brings into our consciousness the adverse impacts that we might not be noticing at like a subconscious level. And so a negative result of procrastination, of course, is that I fall behind or I alienate people I'm working with, or I lose people's trust, which then reactivates the original stressor because things aren't going well. And now I'm again afraid that I'm not going to have everything figured out. So, as you can see, we easily get caught in loops without realizing it. And a similar thing is, it doesn't help if I then start overworking and saying yes to every work opportunity and doing everything really fast, uh, which of course comes with a reward of feeling like I'm in control, I'm on top of things. But that overwork also has a negative result of alienating people around me because I'm tired, I'm unfocused, or I'm spread too thin. And again, the cycle loops back around. And so then the question becomes, how do we stop the cycle? And what we need are new behaviors that are responses to the stressor that don't then reactivate the stressor. And so turning to others, asking for help, seeking cooperation, joining support groups, joining mutual aid groups. All of these are things that we can do that coincidentally activate the same reward center in our brain that gets activated if we're doing something more addictive, like drinking alcohol or scrolling through social media. We get the reward, but we don't get the reactivation of the original stressor. And so, a way that you might fill out this map for yourself is to just think of ways that when you encounter a certain stressor that you're able to turn to others. And it doesn't always have to be a social response. You might dance, you might go for a walk as well, other things that can bring a reward. But there's something in particular about the social reaching out to others that can provide us more of a sustained relief. So consider this your playground. I'll leave you with that as I stop sharing my screen and as Tia starts to share hers.
Thanks, Janelle. All right, I will share my screen. So turning to others to reduce anxiety is such a great move. And I'm going to congratulate myself because I did that when I was feeling stuck a few weeks ago on these very slides. And I just reached out to Janelle for some, you know, comfort. And what she said, she gave me some advice, which I asked for. And she said, for what it's worth, this is a screenshot of our Slack conversation. For what it's worth, my charm mining process is this. I just keep asking myself, what has helped me relax and fall in love with the world? What has helped me let go of fear of failure, comparison to others, competition, overwork, the need to control, etc. And then I kind of wait for a reminder and then I turn it into a charm to share. So I thought to myself, and the first thing that came to mind was this guy. This guy reminds me to be able that I should be able to laugh at myself because he was able to laugh at himself. And I'm not sure if you remember him. This is from 2021, but this is an actual Zoom lawyer who signed on to Zoom, not a Zoom lawyer, an actual human lawyer who signed on to Zoom looking like a cat, and it was a courtroom Zoom. So I'm just going to play this 48-second clip to remind y'all.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take a look.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that. I think if you click the up arrow next to this.
All right. So my favorite part of that video, aside from him showing up as a cat, is that he just recovered and was like, I'm prepared to move forward with it. Like whatever he was about to argue, he was going to do it as a cat. And I think that's great. And, just to let y'all know, he's okay. He didn't go through some mental health crisis. He is now a famous viral cat lawyer who he's known as the cat lawyer. He doesn't actually represent cats, but he helped his niece raise awareness about World Rare Disease Day because he was so famous. He was able to sell a bunch of shirts with that cat on it. And it reminds me of those posters or tote bags or mugs that say, carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man, because those posters always make me smile. And it just reminds me that we don't have to be good. We don't have to be good at everything. We don't have to be perfect. And some people are raised knowing that that's okay, and some people aren't. And so here's a little charm to bring more cooperation into our lives. I mean, to allow you to laugh at yourself more. I was looking at the slide ahead, which is a charm to bring more cooperation into our lives. Just to let y'all know what we're dealing with, everyone, Google took away all of our speaker notes. So we are just here on the fly, and I'm looking ahead when I'm supposed to be present. But okay, I have prepared more than just jokes. Here is a charm to bring more cooperation into our lives. So, as you know, at the Law Center, we're known to talk a lot about how cooperation is good for society, the world, the workplace, self-governance. But what we don't talk about a lot is that cooperation makes us feel good. Cooperation activates the same reward centers in our brain that drugs and alcohol activate. Can you think of a time it felt really good to cooperate with others? Well, a team from Emory University set out to answer why people still cooperate even when it's not in their best interest to do so. They didn't quite answer why people cooperate, but what they did find was super interesting. In the study, the team had 36 volunteers divided into teams of 2. The team members were placed inside a functional MRI scanner, monitoring brain activity. Both team members could see a computer monitor where a game of prisoner's dilemma was screened. And in this study, each volunteer simultaneously pushed a button to say if they wished to cooperate with the other player or to betray the other player. If there was mutual cooperation, they were told they would both get $2. If you decided to cooperate and the other player decided to betray you, you get nothing. If you decided to betray, you'd get $1 if the other player decides to betray, and you'd get $3 if the other player decides to cooperate. So, according to economists, the rational selection in this game would be to betray, because betrayers got at minimum $1 and at max $3. But the study revealed that in real life, mutual cooperation was the most common outcome in the games. And every time the 2 volunteers cooperated, The MRI scanner showed activity in the brain's reward circuits. In other words, not only did the volunteers get $2 each whenever they both cooperated, they also felt good in a way that did not feel that they did not feel when they'd win and the other would lose. And to make sure the reward circuits were responding to the cooperation piece and not the just winning piece, the researchers did the same test, but this time each player's opponent was a computer. And before they played, they were told that their opponent was a computer. The study showed that the activation and reward circuit trigger only happened when volunteers played with another person and not against the computer. Isn't that just so sweet? So, what does this mean for mental health and lawyers? Well, it means that if you cooperate with others, your brain could be so much happier than if you try to figure hard things out all by yourself. So now we have a few minutes to mine charms from the audience. When I asked you earlier to think of a time it felt good to cooperate with others, did you remember a story you'd like to share with us? Or does this study remind you of a time when it felt extra good to cooperate and better than to win? Please raise your hand or type in the chat that you'd like to share, and Erica will unmute you because I have lost everyone. And we have maybe like 1 to 2 minutes to share.
I guess I can share that just anytime I've done a project with somebody else, I'm pretty sure I feel better about it than if I had done it by myself. And this exact image is reminding me that 2 weeks ago I cleaned the gutters of my dad's house where it's hard to move a really big, heavy ladder. There's a lot of, okay, are we going sideways? Are we going this way? Are we going that way? And then there's the placement of the bucket down below so I could drop the gunk. And it was a whole coordination dance. And it just, at the end of it, it just felt great. If I had just cleaned the gutters on my own, I would have just been like, man, I cleaned the gutters. But it just, yeah, it was a good feeling.
Thanks, Janelle. Anyone else?
There's an
Erica.
answer in the chat from Hope that says, I feel good making art with other folks. I also feel good visioning a better future with other people.
I love that. Thank y'all. Yes, we're actually going to do art together later. But first, the next charm is to deal with knee-jerk reactions. Because even though those stories of cooperation are really heartwarming, cooperation is just so hard when we have to deal with the knee-jerk reactions that we've adopted growing up or the ones that people around us have. So this next charm is on how to deal with knee-jerk reactions. So, do some people's personality traits and conflict styles rub you the wrong way and cause you to have that freeze, fawn, fight, flight reactions that Janelle was talking about earlier? Do you ever wish that someone would just go away? What might be going through your mind is that you have judged this person to be annoying. Maybe a more compassionate you slows yourself down from judging others, but then blames yourself instead. Maybe you say you're just annoyed because you're impatient or being unreasonable. But what if instead of blaming the other person or yourself, you slow down even more and map out some of the knee-jerk reactions that you notice are happening in any given moment? That's something I learned from this book, Love in a Fucked Up World: How to Build Relationships, Hook Up, and Raise Hell Together by Dean Spade. He is an anarchist, lawyer, organizer, trans liberationist, and he wrote this super helpful self-help book. And it's helpful for those who believe in compassion, connection, and collective action in theory, but you're like constantly annoyed by the people around you. So, according to Dean Spade, cultural forces like sexism, racism, capitalism, and colonialism implant scripts inside our heads through relentless repetition. We go through life on autopilot, acting out these scripts without even thinking about them consciously. This idea of autopilot means that many of our responses, behaviors, and even feelings aren't really ours. They've just been programmed into us. One effect of autopilot is that we are often drawn into polarized thinking. We lose nuance and complexity, thinking in extremes like I'm the worst or I'm the best. And shame from believing we are the worst can ironically make us unable to listen to people that we really love because we're just stuck on thinking about how bad we are. So when we are trapped in these extremes, we are likely in a state of fear-based conditioning. And remembering this pendulum can help us break away from our reactive thinking so that we can be more critical and more free from it when we are all riled up. Try this phrase: I'm not the best, I'm not the worst. This pendulum can be applied to all kinds of knee-jerk reactions, like numbness or escapism. As lawyers, we often either try to convince ourselves to grow a tough skin, to numb and push down our feelings, or we go the other polar direction, influenced by consumer culture, to spend a bunch of money on vacations, the best car, the best clothes, or the best drugs. Dean Spade suggests that consumer culture wants us numb and addicted, and we need to break out of this culture of feeling and not feeling by breaking up these patterns. And it's as simple as just noticing the space between numbness and escapism. In that space is a full range of emotions. And if your knee-jerk reaction is to numb out or to escape, then conjuring this pendulum up in times of stress may help you remember to slow down and experience more from life. You don't have to do it perfectly to benefit from this exercise. In a culture that incentivizes polarized, unnuanced thinking, even noticing that, hey, I just pushed my feelings down to get through that meeting is a huge first step. Noticing our autopilot mode naturally takes us out of the autopilot mode. Secure Love by Julia Manano is just a self-help book about relationships, but a useful tip I pulled from it is that we come by our coping mechanisms honestly. And I don't just read self-help books, but these are the two that came to mind. Okay, these are the coping mechanisms that help them survive. And although, so these coping mechanisms help people survive. And although they might not be effective right now, they were absolutely effective in getting what they needed as they were developed. And if that's the case, when other people are annoying you because of how they're coping with the fucked up world, then it might be easier to give them grace, knowing they came up by their knee-jerk reactions, honestly. All right, so for some fun, a charm to explore creativity and expression. How many minutes did you spend actively engaged in art yesterday? When a representative sample of US adults answered that question recently, 95% of them said they spent 0 minutes on art yesterday. Most lawyers don't consider themselves artists, and maybe that's because early in life, capitalism told you that you're not the kind of person that can make a living off of your art practice. Maybe you were told that your craft isn't real art. Many of us were taught that we're not supposed to explore creativity unless we can compete in the mainstream art industry. So instead, you became a lawyer, and now you're here today listening to me and us. But art activates the same reward centers in our brain that food, sex, drugs, and cooperation activate. In the last few decades, there have been a bunch of research that shows that the arts can be used to prevent, manage, and treat illness. Arts engagement has been linked to lower risk of developing depression, chronic pain, and cognitive decline, aging free from disease or impairment, and enhanced psychological and social well-being. So let's do some art together. Either use your phone and scan this QR code or click the link in the chat to join this collaborative art collage. And I'm going to put a 4-minute timer on for us to make art together. And the prompt is to add something to the collage that represents your intention to bring love, ease, and cooperation to your work and life. And you could add pictures. It allows you to add pictures. You could add quotes or just draw something. And then I will send a screenshot of this beautiful collage we make together to y'all later.
This is hard. The thing keeps moving. It's hard to cooperate with others.
All right. Thank y'all for participating. That was an exercise in cooperation, but I see there are a bunch of awesome things there. And I'll move the pictures around so that we could all see them. Let me reshare my screen. Where would that be? Okay. Oh, I am still sharing my screen.
I think you're sharing your whole screen now, not just the window.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. We can also combine charms. This is from my favorite paper engineer who made a mechanical card of that cat lawyer, and you can download it. The link is in the slides. So that's combining the charms of allowing yourself to laugh at your own mistakes and doing art. The next slide is from Toby.
Thanks, Tia. Thanks, Janelle. Um, so we wanted to also bring up that this new requirement from the California State Bar um, that all licensed lawyers have to submit an annual declaration of adherence to the attorney oath, which includes a commitment to act with dignity, courtesy, and integrity, um, as an inspiration to possibly write our own oaths, because this is a very like cookie cutter oath that's some people could find like uninspiring or even though like dignity, courtesy, and integrity are good, like we wanted to like give everyone an opportunity to declare something that is more meaningful to each of you. So next slide, please. So given that, yeah, we wanted to give everyone here the opportunity to think about what might be an oath you want to commit to, that feels good to you. Because to us, oaths are like spells. They're simply fancy words that we say in a fancy setting while standing with our hand in the air. And it's silly on the one hand, fancy, formal, maybe unnecessarily so, but not silly on the other hand, because studies have found that rituals and other formal intention setting can have a powerful impact on how we actually live and behave. Um, and an oath or a vow is like a law that we adopt within our psyche. And rituals can make internal shifts within us visible and memorable. Um, so I don't think we have a lot of time to have us journal or anything like that, but here are a few questions that you could maybe take after this presentation and journal on. What commitments might I make to break the spells of fear, competition, and isolation? Like I know for me, like law school and training as a lawyer inculcated me with a lot of fear, isolation, loneliness, and feeling like I couldn't always ask for help in every situation, or I needed to know the answer all the time. Are there any new oaths or vows that you might like to consider adopting in your life? And if you come up with a potential new oath or vow right now, feel free to share it in the chat. Or just take this later and think up a new oath that would be meaningful for you and help you try to break the spells of that the dark spells that the law has cast on us. Thanks, Janelle. Janelle says in the chat, I want to support me and everyone to be their most loving selves. I love that. All right. So I think it's time for reflections. We have just under 3 minutes left. And we're just going to open up the floor to everyone to share any reflections that you want to share. Maybe if you could like raise your hand and I'll call on you and then unmute yourself and share your reflection. Or if you don't want to speak out loud, feel free to just share it in the chat and I'll try to catch it and read it out loud.
Should I stop the recording or keep it in there?
If you don't mind, keep it so that this can be an hour-long MCLE credit video.
Okay.
I know that might inhibit some people from talking though.
Does anyone have any reactions? Anything that they felt inspired by? Any difficulties that came up? Any requests for help? Anything in the slides reminded you of, like experiences you want to share? I see Brenda, you said thank you, definitely moving more, feels good and need to do more art. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I need to do more art too. I felt like sometimes I felt insecure about doing art for the reasons that Tia shared. But last time we had a retreat, our colleague Christine had us all do an art activity. And I have the result up on my wall. You can't see it here, but it's like a block of wood with like a postcard and some paper pasted onto it, and it sort of looks like the ocean. The patterns in the wood look like the ocean. Anyone else want to share a reflection or anything that's coming up for you? Well, I see we're at time, so maybe this is a good time to close out. Janelle or Tia, would you like to close this out?
Nope. Just thank y'all so much for coming.
Thank you for
Maybe
letting
we'll
us
see you
try.
on March 4th.
Yeah. And thanks for letting us try our magical charms on you all. I hope it brings some sparkle to your lives. Thank you for
Oh,
being here.
sparkle.
Thank you all.
Thank you.